End Climate Change, Jibrila Ahmed. Please, let's clap for him as he takes his seat. Please, if you don't clap for him, he won't come. Right. We also have the Director and Head of Natural Resources Department at the Environmental Protection Agency, Isaac Charles Aqua Jr. Please, let's appreciate him as he takes his seat. And his boss is also a very good friend of my station, Dr. Kurugu. He loves to come to our station to have conversations on the environment. Then we also have Kwesi Anderson, Senior Biosafety Officer at the National Biosafety Authority. Please, let's clap for Kwesi. And I don't know why they all decided to occupy the seats that were occupied by men yesterday and leaving one for the female. But it's good for me because then the female gets to sit closer. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Project Coordinator for the National Development Planning Commission, Phyllis Partey. Great. So these wonderful people here would help me dissect the topic for today. And we'll be having that conversation on the role of state institutions and regulators, basically in also promoting indigenous seed development and food sovereignty. But if we can get some further microphones here, yes, the team, we can get 2 more microphones so that at least it makes it easier for us to get into the conversation. Okay. Right, so as it stands now, I would like to quickly zoom into action and then get to understand some questions that... Right, okay. Is the sound okay now? No, we have only one microphone here. Right. Okay. So we'll start the conversation, and I really want to start the conversation with Jibrila Ahmed from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And quickly, we're talking about the role of state institutions, but I want to find out in the first place, are there policies that are in place basically to promote the development and use of indigenous seeds at the ministry, for instance? Okay, yes, it's active.
Thank you very much. Actually, there are policies. The current operational document of the ministry, that is FASDEP 2, and objective 4 of that policy document is on sustainable management of land and environment. And as part of our efforts in promoting sustainable practices, we adopt or we promote the use of indigenous varieties. That is sustainable practices, which of course captures the use of indigenous crop varieties. There is also an aspect of the document that is on plant regulation, and that aspect is worked on by the Plant Protection and Regulatory Directorate. I don't come from that directorate, but where I work with environment, land and water management of the Directorate of Crop Services, these are the areas that is under sustainable management of land and environment. And we promote practices like conservation agriculture, organic farming, and so on and so forth. I mean, these are sustainable practices. And these are practices that makes room for indigenous variety. Because if you are talking about conservation agriculture like this, we even do conservation agriculture promote the use of chemical fertilizer to some extent. It encourages more of the conservation practices. What it means is that if you are doing conservation practices, your reliance on chemical fertilizers over time reduces. So the window for how do you call it, indigenous seeds is that because you know indigenous seeds do not rely heavily on chemical fertilizers as compared to the hybrid seeds that we are currently using. So that's for instance provides a window for use of indigenous seeds. There are a lot of projects that we are currently promoting we are doing a lot of work with FAO on conservation agriculture. We are also doing sustainable land and water management under the Ghana Landscape Restoration and Small Scale Mining Project. And all these are areas that encourages or promote the use of indigenous varieties.
So in which areas are these promotions done?
That's what I'm saying. Like, for instance, a project on organic farming, for instance, is a project that is sponsored by, depending on where the sponsorship is coming from. It is looking at how to promote organic agriculture. Organic agriculture, for instance, you don't rely on the use of chemical fertilizers. And we know that indigenous varieties do not rely heavily on chemical fertilizer. Because when you are going for the conventional farming practices that we do, and you promote stuff like hybrids, what it means is that you are going to rely more on external inputs like chemical fertilizers and so on. But when you are promoting a practice like conservation agriculture or organic farming, what it means is that there is a minimum reliance on the chemical fertilizers, and that is where you can bring in the, how do you call it, the indigenous varieties. That is where the promotion of the indigenous varieties comes in.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
even though sometimes you don't have direct, but some of them are embedded in projects that we do within the ministry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
now, let me come to Isaac. I mean, from the EPA perspective, the issue of land, the use of fertilizers, the impact. I mean, we even heard how some vegetables are farmed and the source of water from these vegetables, that even though we say they are organic, the source of water, we cannot determine the content of that water. And so all of that affects the land and issues like that. From the EPA perspective, what can be done or what is being done in that direction?
Thank you. Yeah. The Ghana Environmental Protection Agency Act of 1994, Act 490, was established to provide to promote sustainable environment management and protect natural resources. The Act primarily focuses on environmental protection. Its implication extends to various sectors, including agriculture and food sovereignty. Okay. The Act enjoins the agency to collaborate with key institutions to ensure that environment is protected, emphasizing the need for co-management, protecting and enhancing the country's environment. We have one tool that we use as one of the tools for environmental management, and that's the environmental assessment. Okay. So the EPA Act establishes guidelines for environmental impact assessment. So any undertaking, whether agric or whatever, has to go through the environmental assessment. And based on the kind of assessment, it will determine the type of activity that will be promoted. And this is crucial for preserving local biodiversity and ensuring food production systems remain resilient. So the EPA regulates key undertakings that may impact on the environment and eventually lead to food insecurity. So we promote sustainable practices. By promoting these environmental sustainable practices, the Act supports food sovereignty by encouraging farming methods that enhance local food system rather than rely on industrial agriculture, which often undermines local farmers. Right. So the Act emphasizes the protection of native species and ecosystem as enshrined in the Schedule 5 of the subsidiary legislation LI 1652. Besides, we also regulate agrochemicals. Okay. So the EPA regulates the use of chemicals which include pesticides and fertilizer, which is used by the agri sector. Okay. And we have registered chemicals all over, and the list is, when you go to our website, the list is there. But we all know that all agrochemicals are poison. Every agrochemical is poison. But we need to also look, at times, I don't want to use the word ecosystem, I prefer using landscape. If you look at our landscape, we have different activities. And the Natural Resource Department, we look at the landscape in terms of the watershed or the basin. So if you look at the watershed, you will know that there is forest here, there is agricultural lands here, there is national parks, and all this contribute to ensure our agricultural productivity.
Okay.
And there is ecosystem services that promotes and improve agricultural productivity. So the moment you degrade any of those systems, it means your food sovereignty will be compromised.
Yeah.
I'm a practical field man.
Right.
So I'm going to talk about practical things.
Okay.
If you look at cocoa, somebody mentioned cocoa this morning. When you enter the Kwawu East area, it used to be cocoa production area, but currently, when you get there, it's a grassland. And under the Ghana Landscape Restoration, we are trying to restore the land. We send soil research to go there. The soil is fertile and is good for cocoa production. But the moment you plant the cocoa, within the first and second year, the cocoa dies off. Why? Because the microclimatic conditions that are conducive for the cocoa to strive is not there, because the trees have been cut, it's bent, the place is dry, and the microclimatic conditions that support cocoa production is not there.
Right.
The same thing applies to the indigenous species that we are trying to promote. The microclimatic conditions that formerly they used to thrive currently are not there, because we've either destroyed and some of the prey that feed on some of the pests and parasites, they are currently not there. So they look for alternative. Okay. And the alternative is our local varieties. Therefore, there is a need for us to use chemicals to also protect this. But the chemicals, there has been a lot of sensitization, awareness, and our Chemical Control Center with PPSD, the Plant Protection and Regulatory, where when the farming season is about beginning, you see them on radio station doing a lot of awareness creation.
In terms of the guidelines that you talk about, how do you really implement them? Because it's said that people do not do what you expect, but what you inspect is what they do. So how do you ensure that there is adherence to these guidelines, these beautiful guidelines that have been put in place to protect the agroecology and basically our ecosystem?
You see, our staff strength is not enough. So that's why I'm saying we collaborate and co-manage.
Okay.
So all the other sectors, including CBOs, we do awareness creation, take them through the guidelines. These chemical sellers, we sensitize them, tell them the kind of chemicals that are registered in Ghana that can be used. So there's more sensitization that's needed to be done.
Very well.
And we hope the media will support us in that direction, because this is life and death. Sure. And as I mentioned, chemicals are there to kill.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll have more on that, and I'm also sure that you have put together questions that you would want to pose. But let me come to you, Kwesi. I mean, when you did your presentation, you made us aware of what you do and all of that. But I'm curious, is there any work being done in terms of researching on, say, indigenous seed varieties by the National Biosafety Authority? Is there any work like that ongoing?
Thank you. At the moment, no, because that's not our mandate. I indicated in earlier discussions that there are seed development entities that are in the country. Binari and Agaek is one of them. They're into seed development. CSI has some of their 13 institutions also into seed development. So for us, it's only when they decide to go in to do the development, then we come in to make sure that we checkmate them.
Right.
Yeah.
And have you done any checkmating so far in terms of people wanting to veer into the development that would now solicit your mandate?
Not necessarily. So, for instance, beginning of the year, Binari, which is the biotechnology arm of GAEC, they put an application for us to certify the laboratory to do some biotechnology work, which has been done and permit has been given. So that's one aspect of it. When they decide to do the research itself, then we can also enter into discussions and see which aspects they want to do and what are the necessary regulatory steps or guidelines that they ought to follow before permission or permit is granted. Okay. All right. So
we'll come back to that, but let me also take the preliminary thoughts of Phyllis on this matter. Now, a policy framework that basically is supposed to guide us going into the future. In the NDPC's policy, is there anything that has to do with seed development, indigenous seeds? Is there anything in your policies like that?
Okay, so thank you. So NDPC's policies, if you take our current medium-term plan, there is a whole section on food systems transformation and nutrition security. So maybe get to give more information on that. Ghana we participated in the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021 in September, and globally we are looking at transforming our food system, of which Ghana participated. We made some commitments, and one of the strategies is to ensure seed security, of which we are ensuring that we have healthy seed breeds available. Yes, so it is clearly stated in our medium-term national development plan, of which we expect the MDAs to plan according to it. So we have MOFA taking the plan and making sure they work on that, and all the other agencies that work on seeds.
But do the MDAs really work according to these plans that are there?
Yes, they work according to the plan, because we don't just give them the plans. We have a guidelines and we monitor. So we have the documents of each of the MDAs and we look at it before we certify them. Every MDA has to get a certification from us before even government gives you money. Yeah, so without it, you don't get any money to work with us, an institution.
Right. And what's the status now in terms of the MDA's compliance, their compliance to all of these?
So definitely they are working, but maybe the degree at which they are working, we can measure, because they submit annual reports of which they do that. So my colleague from MOFA is saying there's a section that works on it, so definitely we are working on it.
Okay, and since you've mentioned your colleague from MOFA, let me go back to Jibrila and talk about the partnerships and how you are partnering with agencies, partnering with local farmers to bring this awareness to them.
Yes, I mentioned earlier that we do a lot of partnership. For instance, the Plants Protection and Regulatory Services Directorate, which is one of the directorates of the ministry, works hand in hand with EPA. And for us, that is Crop Services Directorate. We also work with EPA and as well as other organizations where it matters. When it comes to working with farmers, for instance, farmers are also another partners that we work with when it comes. We work with farmers mainly through projects. For instance, the projects, every project has an objective. So there are projects that look at sustainable management of environmental resources. So when the project is related to that, management of environment resources, implementation is done at the district level, and that is where the farmers are. So for instance, earlier on I spoke about a project that was looking at conservation agriculture. That one, for instance, you work with farmers at the district level, and look at some of the practices that they can do to conserve the environment. There was also a project on organic farming, for instance. We work in some selected districts. Normally, the funding is not that much, so you look at districts that the funding can cover, and then you work in those districts. And the idea is to help promote some of this, or promote the use of some of these indigenous practices, or mainly to look at environmental sustainability. So, like I said, you may not be working, say the objective may not focus directly on, for instance, indigenous or use of indigenous, but the objective try to, help farmers to be able to adopt some of these practices. Like I said, example, the challenge that we have here in this country when it comes to farmers adopting indigenous practices is that most farmers complain that they don't get premium for some of the sustainable practices that they do when it comes to marketing. If you go to a market now, how do you differentiate between an organic product or a product that is organic product or inorganic product? It's difficult because ideally what you expect is that if a farmer is doing conservation agriculture and is using, for instance, an indigenous input to do that, seed or whatever, and then the farmer harvests and sell, he expects that because he's doing, but farmers particular are the ones that we work mostly with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And Isaac, you talked about the fact that, well, all these chemicals, at the end of the day, they are poison in one way or the other. But is there any form of program that sensitizes farmers, that lets them know, okay, well, this is what we know is the end product of this one. So for that reason, we are encouraging you to say, go in a direction, or that does not fall within your mandate?
Oh, it's part of our mandate, and the farmers themselves, currently, they know that the chemicals are poison and it's affecting them. They are aware when it comes to the use of weedicides. The moment you enter the community, they will tell you the effects of using the weedicides, but they will ask you, how do they get labor? Because most of the uptake of nutrients become difficult, even if you apply inorganic fertilizer. So the farmers are aware. So currently what we are doing under the Ghana Landscape Restoration Project, which was an upscaling from the Sustainable Land and Water Management funded by the Global Environment Facility and the World Bank. We are promoting them to practice their indigenous practices, which we now term it as conservation agriculture, sustainable land management, climate smart. It used to be there. It was something they were doing. Now we've introduced them to monocropping, where they will fell all the trees. The land becomes bare. The moment they finish, the land is there. They have mined the nutrients. Instead of the nutrients returning back to the soil for it to improve. In the northern savannah, some of them use it as fuel wood. So there is nothing going back to the soil. But currently, every community that we've managed the project, or we've promoted the project there, when you go there, burning and using the crop trash, they don't do it. They leave it as organic or mulch that improves the soil and cools down the soil. And the recent dry spells, or this year it wasn't dry spell because it went beyond 6 weeks, so it was a drought. Those farmers practicing this conservation, like maize farming, intercropping, having bonding, and stone lining, they were able to conserve water. And if you look at the yields from their fields is far better than those who were not practicing this indigenous farming.
Right.
So we need to look at it, as I mentioned, in the landscape, so that there should be an area which is forested that will provide the needed microclimatic condition for the crops. There should be an area with fauna, biodiversity. They will promote transmission, then biodiversity like pollination, bees,
Right.
and all those things. So there is a need for us to go back and pick our traditional practices. Even those who brought the monocropping are now going back to that. So
Right.
there is a need for us to do that.
Okay. Now, let me come to you, Kwesi. I mean, one of the things that has come up strongly is the fact that we need to find a way to blend technology and our indigenous seeds so that, well, going forward, we can have more adaptability, and then the misconception about how technology is destroying our indigenous seeds. So how do we really situate the issue of technology with indigenous seeds and not to lose the originality thereof?
Thank you. And the answer to that is what we have. Yellow. Funding. If you decide to prioritize indigenous or local researchers and task them to come up with relatable solutions to our people, they will develop their own technology. And a lot of these things will be bygone. We are talking about digitalization. Kenya had M-Pesa as far back as 2010-2009. MTN is now celebrating 15 years of Momo. Where is it 5 or around that years late? But beyond that, there are a lot of young and sharp minds in the tech space that are evolving and coming up. And so if we decide as a country that that is what we need, the solutions that we need, let's put our investments there. Let's task our researchers, and they will do that for us. And Nkrumah did it when technology was not in this state, when they set up VRA and Kolebu and stuff like that. He put people there. And so we can do that. So once we fund our researchers and task them to bring solutions that are suitable to our conditions, that should be the way to go.
But as it stands now, are we even exploring that from where you sit? Do you see that exploration? Do you see people pushing money there?
There is, but much more has to be done.
Right.
If you really need to catch up, like I said, the biotech space, we are 50 years late. We are still talking about public education. 50 years on. Right. There's AI, and I'm sure in the next 5-10 years, probably we'll go to ZI or Alpha I. Now we have Gen Z and Alpha and so on and so forth. And let me also quickly add that there's 6G. China, they are now moved from 5G to 6G. Mm-hmm. We've not even done with 4G. We've not even done exploring 4G. No, we probably not done even half. Mm-hmm. And that's for me how dire or how we should situate the issue and look at it. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you. Now, I know your questions are ready, so let me just ask one last question so that I give you the microphone to do the questioning for me. But let me come back to you, Phyllis. Now, you talked about the fact that, well, MMDAs are aware, the policy is there. How do we strengthen the adherence? How do we ensure that it does not just sit with the MMDAs, but it really trickles down to the individuals who need to know about these for them to pick up what they need to also put in place? Okay,
so the guidelines are there, or the policies are there, and the MMDAs are also aware of them. Mm-hmm. We frequently have our annual plans where we disseminate some of these findings. Yes, and also the CSOs have been helpful in this space, and we work collaboratively with them and also with the media as well. Mm-hmm. So I think let's continue to work together, and then we still tell people about it, and then people will get to know more about it. Okay. Yes, we should just continue and then maybe increase our force. Yes. So let's continue to work together. Please, let's give a round of applause to my panelists. Okay, so we'll do questions and answers quite quickly. And so as you already know, we take 3 questions, we get responses
take the next set of questions and get responses. So if you have any question to ask, just put your hand up. We'll bring a microphone to you. You will then ask your question, and then we'll solicit answers from the panelists. So if you have a question, you can just indicate by showing your hand. Right? So, and please, I beg you, let's keep the questions very, very straight to the point so that we don't spend all our time on asking one question. So, Prof, my brother from Plan, and then my sister there. Please, if you can get the microphones to them, please, quickly. So, Prof would ask one. Okay, let me get a microphone there. Yes. All right, it is already on. So, from Prof, then to my brother from Plan International, then my sister there.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Listening. So we are doing our best, right? What else do we need to do as institutions to ensure promote indigenous? If we are doing things on our own, this question is not for a particular individual, but for all the panelists. If you have a perspective to share, how we can do things differently to ensure that we actually promote indigenous.
Thank you, Prof. My brother from Plan International. Prof, I like the tone you have said. Very short question. So let's all follow Prof. Follow who no road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My question is for us to help me, whether to confuse me more or to help me understand. What happened in the recent past in the northern part of Ghana and other parts of the country? What is the right terminology to use? Is it drought, long dry spell? Because I want to live here with a clear mind so that when I'm communicating, I know the right term to use.
Okay.
My next question is to Kwesi.
I beg, briefly.
Kwesi?
Yes.
Hello, Kwesi. Are you there? Your sector, do you have laboratories, technologies to cross-check some things before you regulate them, or you are using the ordinary African eye?
Okay, right. So my sister next to you. Then we'll take the final one from Doc. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much to all the panelists and the earlier people who submitted. Mine is more of a comment.
Okay.
I think, introduce myself. Yes, please. My name is Irene. I work with Oxfam. Okay. Thank you. When I got this invitation and I read through the agenda or the objective and saw there were to be sessions on food security and food sovereignty regarding seed, I looked through the institutions that were to be there, and I realized, or maybe from a personal view, one institution was missing. And I think Kwesi, in his submission, has mentioned that institution twice already, CSIR. We have 13 institutions with over 60 fields, research fields, that we can tap into in the discussions of seed production. So I just want to point it out to Action Aid. I don't know how far the project has gone, but for consideration regarding seed production, if we could consider bringing in CSIR as part of the research institutions that we are working with, I think it would go a long haul too. Yeah, so thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Irene. And the final one we'll take from Doc, then we'll come for answers. I beg you, please. Doc, let's give it to Doc. Take answers and come back for the next batch, please.
My question is to my uncle from second from, on approving or maybe, let's say approving the chemicals, the weedicides, or insecticides or whatever. What are the guidelines? Do you have some guidelines in doing that, or some indicators? And after the use, I think it has been used for a long time. Have you done any research to see the impact, or are you aware of any research in that area? Because for all we know, we all believe that there is impact. What kind of impact and then the effect?
Okay, thank you. So we'll start from the EPA, the guidelines on approval of weedicides.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. the approval, it goes through a system where there is a board that looks from different institutions. They sit and get the chemical approved. They do laboratory tests. EPA has a lab. Where it's beyond EPA, they rely on other labs to assess them. And complaints that are received prompts them to look at the chemicals that has been registered and approved. So based on complaints, and at times too, they do field monitoring. So when they do the monitoring, any issues that comes up, and during their sensitization and awareness with farmers, they also get feedback. So based on that, they look at the list and then list them and change some of them from the list.
Okay.
In connection with the dry spell and
Yes. What are we experiencing up north?
yeah, we met Metro. Metro, even if it's 2 weeks, they call it a drought. But some international organization, when it's 2 weeks, they think it's a dry spell, which you can easily change if you put in the needed practices. But when it goes beyond 3 to 6 weeks, then it means there is dryness within the system.
Okay.
So that one is what they call drought.
The drought. Okay.
Yes. And then Prof's question concerning
What more do we need to do?
yes, in promoting, you see, that's why I said I'm a practical man, and I'm happy he's coming from a research institution. You see, farmers wants to see that they get the maximum yield. You see, and to get the maximum yield on a piece of land depends on the kind of technologies that you apply to the land. Somebody may plant about 3 acres, and the other will plant 1 acre. But the 1 acre might get a bigger yield than the one using the. So if the researchers can use the Indigenous 6, improve it, and then come up with a guide that when you do this, you will get this kind of yield. The farmers will adapt it. I remember we were doing this logging project with IUCN, and Sari presented some planters to the farmers. And within a day, the farmer can plant a whole acre using the planter, and it's in line. So it makes weeding and other applying even organic or inorganic fertilizer easier, and they get their maximum yield. So the farmers do more intensification because they have the technology than doing intensification and clearing more land.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the others will also add up to it. But let me pick Kwesi. Okay, on that, then I come to Kwesi. Whether you use your eyes to check the things or you have machines.
Okay, I think one other thing that we can do to promote the use of indigenous seeds is that there is a whole lot of talk on land use plan. Let me use tomatoes, for instance. Some 30, 40 years ago, most of the tomatoes that we consumed in Accra were coming from Ada and Chopoli areas. Now, if you go to that area, because there is no land use plan, the whole area have been converted into a residential hub. Now, you ask yourself, those local varieties that were planted in Chopoli now, those days, when you take them to another tomato growing area like Akumadan, and they may not do well there.
Right.
Yes. So it means that because there was no, how do you call it, enforcement of land use plan in that area, that variety can no more become useful in the system. So the way our agriculture is going, land use has been a big challenge to our agricultural production in this country. All because the land is not owned by the government, it is owned by the chiefs. So the chiefs are doing their own thing, government is also doing its own thing. So it's very difficult for us to manage some of the things or some of the challenges in agriculture. So land use, because you go to advanced country, within the city you have some farmlands. The fact that it's a city doesn't mean that there should not be farm there. So assuming Chopoli had been maintained, those varieties that were cultivated those days would have still been there. Right. Now it's because now we are used to the current one, the one that comes from Burkina Faso. We are used to it because we shifted from that one, and now we are now getting used to the one that comes from Burkina, and that is what our market women now prefer. But those ones also have their own advantage. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kwesi, do you use your eyes, or you are under resource?
I was just wondering, the African eye, how does it look like? Is it bulging? Is it black? Is it the owl type? How is it? Or is it the red one that we do when we are mourning? But no, we don't use our eyes or our eye. There's a lab. There are trained people who undertake the testing. Applicants are required to bring some proofs, and those proofs are verified by lab people and the experts in the technical advisory committee that are indicated. They also, with their experience, and all this value chain are Ghanaians. There are no foreigners or any foreigners in there. Mm-hmm. So yes, we don't use our eyes. They are tested, they are verified and confirmed.
Okay.
Just to add to what needs to be done.
Right.
My big boss has said a lot. I think we need to be intentional about our choices. What do we want? And that will start what is indigenous seed. I'm sure once we define that, I'm not saying that it's not, probably it's the definition somewhere, but then that will then direct us to how we'll be intentional about the thing. During the lunch, we talked about school feeding. Where are they sourcing the food, the rice and the grains from for the woman who does the cooking? They are all imported. But if we're to be intentional and say that once it's Ghanaian maize or local rice or whatever it is, that children will be fed with, that in itself is a huge market for all those who are involved in the seed development or local or indigenous seed development, than we wait and import from wherever it comes from, you know. So that for me, okay. Again, maybe probably also provide incentives or, you know, for those who patronize those indigenous or seeds that develop here to essentially create the market. Okay. Government cannot do all, but government has a big pocket. He has a big money. And once they commit to buy from all these developers and aggregate them, it will be a start, and the private people can also come in. Yeah. All
right, so we'll take the last batch of questions. So please, okay, sure. And NDPC, what can we do?
So with what NDPC can also do, we are currently working on the next medium-term development policy framework. That is 2026 to 2029. So personally, I'm grateful to be here to enjoy all these discussions. I noted in my report yesterday that I would definitely have to visit the Action Aid platform to download some of the reports that were made mention of, and also the reports from this session, so that in planning it, we'll be able to identify and particularly prioritize using the indigenous way of planting and everything. So we will definitely make sure it is into our next medium-term plan, and also ensure that the MDAs also prioritize it in their plans. Thank you.
Thank you. So you see the thing is sweeting, but when you went for lunch, you didn't come back early. So please, quickly, the questions. We have 2 minutes to wrap this session up so that we can move to the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take these 4 questions, take answers, and wrap it up. HOP, you have the mic.
Thank you very much. We have taken judicial notice of the comment by the lady from World Vision.
Oxfam.
Oxfam, yeah. Grateful. Actually, we tried to invite Savannah, Sari to be here with us, but they couldn't participate. So we are very much aware of the role they could have played, and subsequently we'll deal with it the next time. Now, my issue, especially with the state institution, comes to what we'll call the enforcement bit. I know you are dealing with laws that exist promulgated by the parliament, and you've quoted a number of them. And I know that laws, we have at least two folds of it. We have the substantive law, we have the procedural law. And most of what you have given to us is the procedural law. I know maybe you feel that there's no time for us to go into the substantive parts, and that's not what we are interested in. But I also was expecting to hear something about what I'll call the punishment. And in law, there's what we call nulla poena sine lege. There is no law without a corresponding what? Punishment. What are the punishments that exist? And are they deterrent enough for people to comply? That's all I want to know.
Okay, so punishment. Adam has one here, my brother has one. Hey, Eugenia, the way your hand is going up there. So please, let's get a microphone to Adam quickly, and then let's ready my brother and then Eugenia.
Thank you. I have a question for EPA.
Briefly.
I want to share the complaints that we are getting from our farmers. And it has to do with misapplication of the chemicals. And it is coming from maybe the premise that we don't know how EPA also goes about giving the permit or the licenses to people who are, I don't know how to say it, those who are into the chemical business. Because sometimes they go to the communities, they sell the chemicals to the farmers, and they look as if they don't also understand the application, the method, the proper way of applying those chemicals so that it will not have any effect on the food crops that are grown. So it's like, I don't know whether do you consider, because what we see is that some of them, they need to do some kind of trials. Because it is only the trials that will also help you know how you can advise a farmer on the application. And they look as if they don't do it. Majority of them, they don't do it. So usually farmers complain a lot to us.
Right.
And secondly, you also mentioned about monitoring in the field. I don't know, do you also monitor to observe some of the chemicals that are allowed into our system, how they affect our food system, so that those that you think that are having an effect on our biodiversity, you can call them or withdraw them from the system.
Okay.
Do you regulate that? Do you do research or even as part of your monitoring so that you can advise to also withdraw those chemicals from the system?
Thank you. Maxwell from World Vision, please let's pass the microphone on to Maxwell.
Mine has to go to biosafety, EPA, and crops.
One question or three questions?
No, it's one question, but they can respond to it.
Sure.
Yeah, we do see a lot of our farm produce being sent or being exported, and they are being banned by different countries just because of, I want to believe, biosafety or regulatory issues or whatever it is. What is it that we are not doing well as a country? Is it coming from the farmers? Is it coming from regulatory bodies? Because I believe all these things or produce have gone through these processes before going to those countries, but we still do experience this thing. So it will be good for us to know where the issues are still coming from.
Okay.
Then the next one has to go to biosafety to find out in terms of their mandate. Do they do some collaboration with other external or other countries in terms of their, specification about their standards to really understand what is happening out there so that some of those things can be integrated into our system to ensure that doing businesses across country still falls within that international standard, what we call it, approval to allow easy movement of goods and services.
Very well. Thank you, Maxwell. Eugenia, please. Oh, your question has been asked already.
Thank you. I think mine goes to the man from Agrec.
Okay.
I'm thinking of technology. How or what are you doing to ensure that smallholder farmers get technology that at least reduces their burden on the farm? You've talked about planters and all that, but I'm also aware that these planters are being brought in by private individuals, which makes it more expensive for them to access. The other thing too is, I'm aware that we have the commercial input centers where we have tractors and other technology available as a communal thing. But we are also aware that it's difficult for women in particular to access these implements and things that are there. So what are you doing to ensure that these smallholder farmers are catered for?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take the final one from CD. CD has the final bite, and then we'll take solid responses. In the next 5 minutes, we should be done with this session.
Thank you very much. I think Eugenia is the women's rights manager, so you will know the context of a question. In other words, how are you centralizing women in terms of those interventions? First and foremost, let me congratulate all of you for the spirited conversation around this topic. You know, it used to be difficult to be able to get people like you spend all your day with us to engage in these kinds of conversations. And in that light, I want to add my voice to thank you for responding to our call. And your discussions are so rich. You see, I've sandwiched Kwesi and Isaac today with so many questions and discussions. It's my sister I've not seen yet. I would have come to your table as well. The name again? Phyllis. Okay, thank you very much. Now, first and foremost, I'm interested in finding out how institutions of state like you collaborate. You see, you are doing similar work, but if it is well harnessed, then there would be a strong sense of synergy. And that is when our energies are converging, and we are going to have a strong force of change. And so you said we shouldn't talk plenty, so let me guard myself. That's one.
Right.
Number two, I'm also interested in finding out. So if you take NDPC, ActionAid, for example, has worked with NDPC in so many respects. For example, we have been able to work with NDPC to develop a tool to support medium-term development planning, particularly at the municipal, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. And so we are trying to follow up to find out how you are using some of these tools. Because essentially, to promote sustainability, we work with you. In the same way, EPA, we have worked with you to look at how your national climate change strategy is gender sensitive. And so, post that, how are those tools being effectively used? And the same for MOFA. MOFA will work with you so much in terms of furthering agroecology at the district level, at the community levels. And so it will be interesting, because if we are investing, people's money in this type of work, we should occasionally be able to mirror and inform them what the tools and the monies have been used for. And thirdly, sorry that I'm just, they say he who loves, or she who loves loves best. Loves better. Then finally, right, how does the NDPC, for example, that is planning the next development framework, broaden engagement with civil society organizations like us? But also, mind you, there are some friends that stick closer than your brothers and sisters. We have demonstrated commitment to working with you. So if you are developing such a national strong framework, ActionAid, for example, to put it directly, is interested in being part of this process. And so I'm also happy to hear from you how you intend to mainstream us effectively in terms of what you are doing. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you very much, Mr. John Nkor, Country Director for ActionAid Ghana. So we'll start from addressing the concerns raised by John, and then we move up the ladder. So NDPC, from 2026 to 2029, medium-term framework, how are you featuring us at ActionAid?
Okay, so I'll take the first one that is on how can we collaborate.
Right.
Yeah, so with the collaboration, I'm very glad I'm here because I know you've been working with us, and we will be sending an invitation soon. We want to hold a series of dialogues, food systems dialogues, which will be coming up very soon. And then definitely we would like Action Aid to be a very key partner with us on that. Yes, so please be expecting my invitation. Yes. And also with the guidelines, we are still using the guideline, like I mentioned earlier, when the districts or the MDAs and the MMDAs develop their plans, we ensure that they work with the guidelines because that's what helps them to do the work more easily. And then we certify them. So please be rest assured that we are still using the guidelines, and the partners should be rest assured that we are still using the guidelines. Yes.
Okay. Mofa, Action Aid raised concerns. Yes.
Respond to Madam's question.
Oh no, you can do that and we go to Madam.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, Madam, his question was how to help women improve on technology.
Yes. And access to equipment.
Access to equipment. In fact, access to equipment is a challenge. And this current PFG 2, has identified that in the previous PFG 1. So it is one of the, intervention areas. And they said we have set up AMSEC centers at the district. But of course, you know, the districts, the communities within the district are big. So for instance, if you have one AMSEC sector, that is Agricultural Mechanization Center, that is to provide mechanization services to the farmers at the community level. And you have maybe one center per district, it will still be a challenge for other farmers who are very far from the centers. Yeah, so I think that for all this while, what we have been telling our farmers is not the access to the services, equipment is not only a challenge to the female anyway. Okay. The male also face the same challenge. Right. So what we have been advising them is that we have been talking to the farmers to always try to work in groups. In fact, the very few private services that are in the communities, they also tell us about their challenges. That when I go to community A, I only go and work on 2 people's farm. And just considering a farmer, a service provider moving from town to the community with some quantity of work. And there is a fixed charge that they charge per acre. So if the person is coming from, let's say, in a community like this, a person coming from Medina to this place to come and farm, and he comes to plow 2 people's food, he has to factor in the fuel from that place up to this to the community is going. So what we've been advising the farmers to do is to always try to work in groups, so that when an operator is coming, for instance, is coming to plow a field of about 15, 20 farmers, and you call the farmer, the person will come. But if it is about just 1 or 2, then it becomes a challenge. The ministry is doing something to help farmers in this area. But you know, like I always say, the ministry cannot do all. Even it is an opportunity for the private sector to come in. Right. I know a tractor is also doing something where they they provide some short code for farmers who want to access the services and so on. Yes, so these are the things that are currently ongoing. But for the ministry, it will be a big challenge for us to supply tractors to all the communities.
Okay.
Yes, it's a big challenge.
Right.
The issue is that the equipment are not there, but the very few ones that are there, I think that the farmers should take advantage of that and maybe try to work in group. Let's say if the farmer, an operator is coming to the community to work, he should be thinking of coming to work for about 20, 25 people.
And not just one person.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's come to you, Kwesi. Do you collaborate with foreign countries to develop? Is there any collaboration?
We do not collaborate with foreign countries, but the regulatory space is networked such that there's always interaction.
Okay.
and as it were, it's evolving. And so there's always the need, or we are always in constantly evolving ourselves to catch up with the technology. In fact, the technology is moving so fast. Every day there are new technologies emerging. And fortunately, the law allows us to, again, develop guidelines to meet the evolving technologies in that regard. So yes, there is some, what I call emergence of standards. Because it's very critical to have this because, especially for our case, the way and manner in which things come in, if you decide not to catch up, they can come through Nigeria, through that place, through South Africa, they've been imported, through India, and normally when the company is registered there and it's coming, the regulations over there is not that strict, so it's very essential that we do. A quick one on collaborations.
Right.
We do, and I think again it's also important, we collaborate. And I think so far, so good, there hasn't been conflicts because the rules and the mandates are clearly defined. But of course, there are human institutions. Maybe we're not going to the where there are so much resources. They say, I'm in charge of this, I'm in charge of that. But for now, we're working fine, and as indicated, almost all the regulatory agencies, there are representatives on our technical advisory committee. And so that's, as far as I'm concerned, how the collaboration works, and it's essential for that.
Okay.
On the punishment,
right?
Of course, there are punishments. For us, the process is such that we want to avoid the punishment, which is why there is constant feedback. So we don't have this. Why is this not in the application? Why is it not in the dossier? But again, if it be a means, so when somebody decides to evade and import the thing through the borders, and you have the lead, they are either confiscated, they are fined, or they are taken to court, and there are charges. But again, you know, our penalty unit, they are pre-independence date. 12 penalty unit, 13 penalty units. You convert to today, probably can only buy one megabyte data or something.
Okay, so EPA, do you monitor the chemicals, the application, and why do our crops get banned when they get outside?
Yeah, thank you. EPA, let me start with the human resource. The Act gives us prosecutorial powers, so we can prosecute and we can also be taken to court. And we do have environmental inspectors. They go around, do monitoring. Around 2012, 2011, 2010, there was a lot of chemical poison, especially in the Upper East region. Through awareness, sensitization, now it's calmed down. Currently, you don't hear of chemical poison of farmers. But our main challenge is the number of extension agencies that we have,
right,
in terms of MOFA. Because we work through MOFA, they will provide the extension services to the farmers. When you get to a district, the total number of AEs will be about 5, looking at a whole district. And it's quite difficult. So what we currently do is we train lead farmers to also take up some of the extension services.
Okay.
To their, yeah, we do inspect the products that has to go through to be exported. But you know, some of the farmers, they will not adhere to whatever advice that you give.
Mm.
And some of them, the chemicals that even they use are not even registered. And it's not easy. You know, you have porous bodies. So most of the chemicals that comes in are not even registered. So somebody, unless you, it's quite difficult. So some of the problems it has to be with the farmers and the chemical dealers.
Okay.
They talked about collaboration. EPA, we have what we call intersectorial network for different sectors. And currently, the project that I'm managing, there's Ghana Landscape, is a multi-sectorial. We have the Forestry Service, the Wildlife Division, the Ministry of Agric, Cocoa Board, the EPA coordinates. You see, and that's why I said we use the landscape approach.
Okay.
When you talk about looking at the landscape, we have biological corridors. And the biological corridors, it doesn't belong to government. You might have forest reserves in some areas, but the land might belong to a family, a chief, or an individual. But it's a corridor for migratory animals, like elephants. You need to manage that corridor. And these are biodiversity. Fauna, they do a number of things that we don't see. And then when you enter a farmland, there are floral species. Which one is there? The farmers will tell you it brings rains. But currently, we fell all the trees. And recently, we had a problem with Minister of Agric under their second
Planting for Food and Jobs.
Planting for Food and Jobs. They are clearing hectares of land in areas, and I receive calls from farmers saying they are clearing everything, maybe 20 hectares. They will clear all the trees. So you are degrading the land. And within 2-3 years after you've planted your soybean or cowpea, the land becomes barren and it becomes unproductive. That's why EPA is now seeking a new act that will make EPA have oversight responsibility, so that EPA can take MDAs if they do not do their work.
Okay.
To court. And that's the act, and we have had a lot of challenges and opposition, but we know it will come to fruition, and we will see us prosecuting our own MDAs who are not taking responsibility. And last, it's about the land use plan that the man mentioned.
Yes.
In Accra, Medina East Legon used to be prime agricultural lands. Used to be prime agricultural lands. That's why we had the Legon farms. Mm-hmm. Now they are all residents. So
a concrete jungle.
NDPC, you see, in one of your you've indicated each district should have what they call special development framework, which will be developed into a structural plan.
Right.
But that is not being enforced. You see, if we do have these structural plans indicating that this is an agricultural land, this is a biodiversity sensitive areas, and this is maybe a water source. Nobody, when the structural plan is there and it's gazetted, nobody can do a land use change. It has to go through a whole processes for it to be done. So there is a need for all of us to advocate for that, and it will be in our own interest to get that done.
Please, let's clap for my panel members. And talking about lands, growing up, I remember behind the Ghana International Trade Fair Center, they used to cultivate a lot of okra. Now it's become, you can't even afford a plot of land in Chado. No planting is happening there any longer. But that's what we have become, and that's why we need to have conversations like this to look at what we are doing to ourselves based on our own preferences. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for my panelists as they take their seats. Thank you so much, Kwesi Anderson, Senior Biosafety Officer at the National Biosafety Authority, Phyllis Partey, Project Coordinator, NDPC, Isaac Charles Aqua, Director and Head of Natural Resources Department at the EPA, and Jibrila Ahmed, Assistant Director, Environment and Climate Change at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And the EPA say they want power to start prosecuting you people. You are cutting down trees. Ladies and gentlemen, so our conversations for the past 2 days